Okay.
My name is Marian Magilow. Today is February the 14th, Valentine's Day.
Very good. Okay, Marian, tell me a little bit about your family, your parents and your grandparents, if you knew them.
Well, my parents were both from Poland. Mama came over when she was 13 and Daddy was 17. My grandmother came over. I never saw my grandfather except I had a picture of him. My grandmother came over and lived with one of my mother's sisters in Kansas City. And, you know, she wore a shaitel and long dresses, and we thought she was very, very old, and actually she wasn't that old. And she lived with my Aunt Ida, who their family had several bakeries, and my cousin Jean was one of the girls, and Jean and I were a year apart, so I very often spent the weekend with Jean, and I picked up a lot of Yiddish. My folks did some Yiddish, but not as much as you had to speak in Yiddish to Bubby because she didn't understand anything else. So when I learned a lot of Yiddish just staying with Bubby.
So what city did you grow up in?
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, at 2909 East 29th Street, and so was my sister, and so was my brother. And I'm the middle child, which is wonderful, of course. And I lived there. I went to grade school and high school there. And I got married before I was 19. And I did not go to college. My folks never even asked me because they couldn't afford it. And I was a fairly good student. I was always the tallest and the youngest in the class. I was 5'5.5" at one time, but I was usually the youngest one.
What did your dad do for a living?
Well, they had a little store, and my dad traveled, and he'd go to places in small towns, and he'd buy up everything at the end of the season, dress shops, children's shops, and he'd bring it to Kansas City, and he would sell it to his friends that had shops. So Mama said to him one day, "You're selling it too cheap. We're going to have a shop, and I'm going to take part of the merchandise, and we're going to have a shop, and we'll make more money that way." So Mama opened a shop in a Negro neighborhood in Kansas City. And by the time I was 12, 13, Francis was older than me, we were already working at the store to help out. And so, and Mama did pretty good. I mean, she saved enough to buy a house. She stole money from herself. You know, if business was good, and so she had a pot that, and she ended up buying a very nice house, and in those days, $3,500. And she bought it from some Syrian people who had a big fancy business and they wanted a nicer home. And we had a beautiful house. It had a paved backyard with a built-in barbecue, and we had a sun porch upstairs, you know, and a beautiful front porch in a nice neighborhood. And that's when I went to high school from there. And but we ended up, before that we were just renting usually. But Mama saved enough money to buy a house, or down payment, I don't know. I don't remember really exactly.
So you went to work at a young age. What did you do for fun? What did you do for amusement besides working in the shop?
Well, at school I was into dramatics, and I was in a lot of plays at school and stuff like that. And but I couldn't go on. I mean, they never thought to even send me anywhere. And they wanted to send Frances off to some kind of a school to be a secretary or something, and she went for a while. And then I got married before Frances was a real shonda. So, but it worked out all right.
So how did you come to Dallas? You were married and you
How
were
I
already
come to
married?
that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Francis married Irvin Donsky, and they started a little jewelry business. And my husband was working for Helzberg's in Kansas City. And then we got transferred to Wichita and this and that. But he also was in the jewelry business. Well, when we were in Amarillo, and Irvin called, and he said, Frances is real sick. She's got nephritis, my sister. He says, and I need help in the business. It's going very well, but I can't do it alone. And my husband was in the jewelry business. He says, I would like for you and Marian to come, to move here. And Marian can help Frances. Frances had 4 little kids. So we packed up and we moved here. And I helped Frances. I took all 7, my 3 and her 4. I took them to the doctors. I bought clothes. I bought shoes. I helped Frances. She had a girl in the house that, you know, did some of the work. But Frances was confined to bed for I don't know how many months. She could not get out of bed. So Alan started working with Irvin in one room. And then they decided it wasn't enough and they moved down St. Paul and Commerce. Well, a block down from Neiman's, they built a real nice place. And I would work on the holidays, you know, any holiday I would get someone to stay with the kids and I would help at the store. And then Frances got better. Thank God, she had nephritis. And they didn't know how she was going to do. She was confined to bed. So, I mean, Irvin rented us an apartment. You know, I didn't even see it till we got here.
So you came sight unseen and helped your family out.
Well,
Yeah.
it all worked out very well.
When you got here, did you join anything right away? A synagogue or any
I had
organizations?
3 little kids. We joined Sheriff Israel.
Okay.
When the kids were ready, you know, when I started Hebrew school and all that. See, when I moved here, Beverly had her first birthday here. That's my baby. Michelle was 5 and Mark was 7. So I thought, you know, Mark had to go to Hebrew school and Sunday school and all that stuff. So we joined. So I've been a member at Sheriff Israel 60-some years.
Were they where they are now, the building?
No.
Or they were downtown still?
Mark
South
had the last bar mitzvah in South Dallas.
Oh.
Now, he and Michael, that's Marilyn's oldest brother that's a doctor, were 6 months difference in age, and they were very close. And Michael had one of the first bar mitzvahs in the new building. And Mark had the last one in South Dallas.
Yeah. Very good. Where were your parents at this time? What was happening with them?
Well, they moved here after I moved here, because Francis was here, my brother was here, everybody was here. So my folks moved here.
Okay. And how did they settle in? How do you think they reacted to it all?
Very well, because you see, we had family here. The Pasternak, you know, Jake Pasternak, Dallas Uniform Cap Company, that was family, and all of Irvin's family. And the Eisenbergs all moved here. And that was my mother's sister. She had 6 kids. And so we had family here. And Daddy had a bad heart. And they were staying with Francis quite a bit. So they decided they'd buy a house, and they bought a house. Francis was in University Park on Colgate. And they bought a house 2 blocks from Francis. And then I was looking for a house also, and there was a house right across from Francis in University Park, but it was 3 bedrooms and 1 bath and no den. So I found a house, just had gone up in Walnut Hills, that was 3 bedrooms, a bath and a half and a den, for the same money as the one in University Park. And I thought, well, I don't have to live across the street from Francis. I prefer to have a den. I prefer to have an extra half bath and 2 blocks from the school. So we bought that house.
What school were your children
Foster.
Stephen at Foster. Okay.
I mean, I was between Midway and Marsh. And then this lovely family moved in one door from me with 3 boys. I don't know if you know the Smalls.
Mm.
Helen,
Yeah.
Neil, and Joe. Well, they moved in one door from me. And Helen and I started carpooling together. And Helen was here for my birthday party. And she's a year older than I am. And you should hear what she does. On Monday she does Wheels on Wheels, Meals on Wheels, and Tuesday she goes to the college, and works, and you can't believe her. So we're still friends.
That's great.
We're still friends.
What did you find yourself getting busy with besides the kids? Anything fun? Any interesting activities
And
here?
I was called to the store anytime they were busy. I had to get someone to stay with. I had to work the month after Thanksgiving. I worked Mother's Day, Father's Day. They would call me to the store. And my husband was doing most of the buying at the store. So,
Where did they move to after the downtown location?
well, they stayed in the downtown location, and they built on Northwest Highway. The real big one that Half Price Books is.
Right, Sterling's.
Yeah. So, but they had both stores for a while, and they had a store in Arlington for a while, but it didn't go over real good. And at one time we had 3 stores, and my husband was buying for some of his brother's stores, like the Houston and all, and he did a lot of buying for the stores.
Now back up for just a minute and tell me, where did you meet your husband?
At the Jewish Community Center. And he thought I was older than I was, because look at me at 16.
Yeah, I see pictures behind you. Yeah.
I did not look 16 at all. And so we started dating, and he goes home and he tells his brother, who went to high school with me, and I didn't even know his brother was Jewish. The name was Magilow, and he was a little short blonde fella, And he goes home and he tells Melvin that he was dating Marian Cohen. And Melvin looks at him and he says, "You can do better than that." So Melvin never lived it down, and I was crazy about Melvin. He never lived it down. "You can do better than that," he told him. So Alan thought I was older than I was. He was 7 years older than me. But I was mature, and I'd been working, and so we went together for over 2 years before we got married. And Mom and Daddy did not like it at all. I was too young, and Francis wasn't engaged yet, and all that stuff,
19's pretty young, but I guess back then
I
it
wasn't
was
19 yet.
right. Well, no, I mean when you finally got married, yeah.
No.
So where are your children and grandchildren now?
Well, Beverly is here. That's my baby. She teaches at J.J. Pierce, all 4 years of Latin, and is also head of the foreign language department. And she's got 3 children, and they're all 3 here. David is in the construction business. He's remodeled his kitchens and bathrooms, and he's busy. Ricky is an engineer. He graduated Washington St. Louis #1 in his class.
Oh, great.
And Frankie is here, and she hadn't found herself yet. And then Andrew and my son's 2 boys are here. No, just Andrew. He's something in computers, I don't know what. Daniel is in Knoxville, Tennessee, teaching. He's a college professor. Michelle is married to Richard. They live in Kentucky, and they have a condo in Washington, D.C. Richard has a PhD in English, and Richard goes to Bulgaria to teach. He goes to the Ukraine to teach. He does a lot of that. He gets scholarships of some sort. You think I know what I don't. And they do a lot of traveling. Michelle taught at the junior college in Kentucky also. And so they're both college professors. Mark was Mark. Mark was very smart. he went to Thomas Jefferson, and we built the house on Janmar. So the girls went to school here. Mark was a big man on campus. He was into everything and real smart. And I went to the principal, and he said Mark could stay at Thomas Jefferson. So Mark, when he was 9 years old, comes to me and he said, "We're going to have a band at school. I'm going to be in it." I said, "So what are you going to play?" "I'll tell you tomorrow." Tomorrow, he says, "I think I'll play the saxophone." So I called Brooke Mays to rent him a saxophone. So we rent a saxophone for 6 months. And they called me, did I want to rent it? And well, no, Mark wanted it, you see that. So at that time, I don't know, I paid $50 or something. And I bought him a saxophone, and I never saw him again. All he did was play the saxophone and play the saxophone. And as soon as he thought he was better than the teacher, he'd go find himself another teacher that he thought was better. He did it all on his own. When Mark was 15 or 16, this is the story of Mark. When Mark was 15 or 16, he decided he was going to have a dance band. So he was in AZA, but not very active. He contacted AZA and BBG, and anytime they had a dance, they hired Mark, 4 of them. And he got $100 for the 4 of them. He got 50, and the other 3 got the other 50. So by the time Mark was 16, I didn't give him any money.
He was making his own.
So then it's time for college. And he applied at Harvard and Yale and Princeton, real fancy schools. And everybody told him it was a lost cause. You'll never make it. Well, he got accepted at Rice. And I wanted him to go to Rice because at that time it was no tuition if you got accepted. He decided he'd rather go to Princeton. So Mark went to Princeton. And he was into music real big, and he wanted to be a musician. But he decided he could make more money if he was a lawyer. So he went to Harvard Law School. And he came back here, and he was a lawyer, and he did very, very well. And then Mark had a liver problem and had to have a liver transplant. And after the liver transplant, this is when he's grown already, divorced with 2 little boys. Had a liver transplant. Then he had open heart surgery. Michael Donsky convinced him. All 4 was blocked. And then he went into leukemia. And this is my brilliant boy. Well, he died 7 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
They said that a bone marrow transplant would help. And they wanted, his boys did not meet the criteria. There's 12 points, you have to have 6. Beverly did not meet it. Michelle had all 12. That's the older girl that was 2 years younger than him. Had all 12 points. So they thought, we got it made. Michelle was in Europe someplace, with her husband. And so she flew back, and they did the bone marrow transplant. It lasted 3 months. Leukemia came back.
Let me ask you, what was Dallas like when you first moved here, a little bit, compared to how it is now?
Well, Hillcrest wasn't even finished. When I lived on Janmar for 50 years. Hillcrest wasn't even finished. The expressway wasn't even finished. But I mostly, I was taking the kids to school. Michelle was taking dancing lessons. Mark took care of himself with his music. I didn't have to worry about him. And Beverly was the baby who they say I spoiled. And I was busy with the kids and carpooling all the time. And like I say, working in between and down at the store when they needed me. And I did join Sheriff Israel. I joined, was it Pioneer Women in those days? I know we went to Israel with them. I mean, I joined a few things. Alan was too busy working to join anything, and he wanted to go fishing anyway. So he went fishing. So, but we had nice friends here. Helen and Al Small were our best friends. You know, they lived one door from us. And the Gladers, Irv was in the manufacturing business. Irv and Josephine Glader, I don't know if you ever knew them.
I know.
Well, they were real good friends of ours. And we had, you know, this group that we kind of ran together with, and it was nice. And
Was it much easier to get around the city back then than it
well,
is?
I have no sense of direction. My two girls are wonderful. My genius boy, Mark, was like me. He didn't have a very good sense of direction either.
What are you the most proud of? Your grandchildren you can tell about, but also you yourself personally that you've done here, that you accomplished.
Just my kids. I never had a problem. I mean, they weren't perfect, but I let everybody think they were. My kids never were into dope. They were never smoking. They didn't run with the wrong crowd. My kids were my pride and joy. That was really it.
Do you think that they had a sense that they belonged here, that this was the right home for them, the right place to grow up?
Well, they did very well. I mean, Mark, right away, he bought a place down in Cedar Creek Lake, you know, and he gave Beverly the keys because she had 3 kids. And he said he couldn't have done it without Beverly. She took care of everything, and he was starting to be in bad health, you know. No, they all loved it here. They all loved it here, and Michelle married the boy that lived down the street on High Grove that was our paper boy. I knew his father, I knew his mother, I knew his brothers, you know, and so she married him. Well, she dated him when she was 15 or 16, and she didn't like him. So when they went off to school, Austin, you know, one of the girls says, I'm going out with Richard Freed tonight. She says, tell him hello. So she tells him hello. So he calls Michelle up, and that was over. They were back together again. So Richard, when they got engaged, was in law school. He hated it. So Richard dropped out of law school and went back and got a PhD in English. So they lived in Austin for years, you know, to get a PhD, and he was doing what he liked.
Well, that's good.
So my kids liked it here. Michelle could have gone to a better school, but I couldn't send her with Mark in Princeton and Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
I could not afford to have 2 in the college. So Michelle stayed in Austin, but she joined sorority. She was real active and very popular, and she did fine. Then it's time to go for Beverly to go off to college. And she was 5 years younger than Michelle. So she said to me, what are you going to do with all your money? I said, are you kidding me? So Beverly went to Austin for 1 year and got in sorority and hated it. She says, this is not for me. So she transferred to Washington in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And she graduated and loved it, and she graduated there. So I had kids going to school all over. But they went where they wanted.
When did you make your decision to move up here to the Legacy?
Well, my husband died, and I had this great big house on Jan Mar, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, almost 3/4 of an acre, and a big dog. Well, Alan passed away. He had a bunch of strokes. He was in a wheelchair 14 years. And I had to take care, I mean, I had help. You know, I had someone come in to bathe him and dress him every other day, and I had a girl come in to help me in the house, you know, once or twice. But I was responsible for him, and he weighed 220. He was a big man. And I took care of him. 14 years I had to take care of him. And then Mark got sick. Well, Mark was divorced, and his wife said, you're more capable of raising them than I am, 2 and 3 years old. So she let Mark raise the kids. So, of course, then the boys were older when Mark got real sick. Anytime he got sick, he came and stayed with me. And I took care of Mark and Alan, and Mark brought his dog. So I was busy. And I had to schlep Mark from Janmar down to Baylor House. Well, he lived in Highland Park, and he worked downtown. So I used to have to schlep Mark down when he started with the chemo, with the blood transfusions. I was busy taking Mark down to the hospital 3 or 4 days a week. I was busy.
They're lucky they had you.
Well, I did what I thought I had to do. I did what I could. I mean, Beverly and Michelle helped as much as they could when they were here. Mark's boys were wonderful. I mean, when Mark couldn't do anything, David, was driving already. That's Beverly's oldest. I mean, everybody tried to help.
Right.
Everybody tried to help.
So how many years ago did you sell your home?
Just before I moved here. I mean, I gave it to Marilyn and Sandy, and they sold it real. I could have held out for more money because it was a prime location. I just wanted to I had 4 offers, and we sold it in 6 weeks. I had 4 offers on it. It was a prime location.
Right.
And a big lot. And what's that Jewish doctor's name that bought it? I don't remember. As a young Jewish doctor. They wanted a place that they could have a pool. And I had plenty of room for a pool.
Okay.
But I was there by myself for 10 years after Alan died.
You stayed there for that. Any regrets at all about coming here or moving down here?
No. Mark was still well enough. He took me to the Edgemere. I didn't like it. He didn't like it either. He thought it was too formal. I looked at a few places, and then my cousins, I don't know if you know the Litwins. Buddy's my husband's cousin, Martin. They looked every place in town. So Martin says to me, "You go to the Legacy, you don't look around." They'd already signed up for the villa, So we came over and looked at the plans. It was before, but I didn't have sense enough to put down $100, So we came over and looked at the plans, and Mark liked it, and the 2 girls liked it, and I decided I was going to move here. So I told the kids, and they said, "Mother, we're not going to talk you into it because I've always been in real good health, and I was at the Jewish Community Center every day, and I was real active. I was into everything there, and I was down there, and so I thought, well, the house is 50 years old, and a wonderful house, never had a problem. I thought I might as well sell it while it's in good condition, and while I can move easily, I'm in good health and I won't have a problem." So they kept saying, "Are you sure you want to do this? We're not talking you into it." I said, "No, I want to do it." So when it was finished, I moved in about a month after they finished it here. And I sold my house, and I told the kids to take whatever furniture they wanted, and I took what I needed for here. I didn't buy anything, I just brought furniture. This is my entry hall piece, I just brought my stuff from my apartment, my house.
Right.
And I moved here, and then I had Ruth and Bud moved here after I did. Then Ruth's sister Sarah, who's a good friend of mine, Sarah Shipper. And then I talked Devorah right off to move here, Devorah, and I talked Selma Rayfield into moving here. And I mean, I had plenty, and my cousin Marian, who has Parkinson's, Marian Eisenberg, lives around the corner from me. I mean, I've got more family here than anybody does.
It sounds like it was a good move.
So
good thing to do. Yeah.
And I've been happy. Mark said, "You have to be near the elevator." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Mom, you're in good shape now." He says, "But when you get older, you're not going to want to walk clear down the hall." So I didn't want a 17-foot kitchen. I got the big kitchen. But I like the kitchen in the back. I don't like it in the front. So I've been real happy.
Well, good.
I've been real happy with like I say, everybody's close by. I've got a lot of family around.
Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been a pleasure.
Did you